Hey again, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Electric Avenue's YouTube updates. This is going to be a short one today, I think. Last couple weeks, we're really pushing the time. Last week was like an hour almost. Had so much to talk about. Rocktober was last week, at least the first installment. I don't know why Rhino Records chose to do this, but they chose to pretty much lump everything that they wanted to release major in the first week of October. And there are some other things coming later in the month. Porno for Pyro's Greatest Hits, Ramones reissues, but the majority of it came out Friday, and it was like not I would say mini record store day in some ways, dealing with all of that at once. So if you missed that or you didn't see something about it, go back and watch it. Over here on my corner, you can kind of see there's a Devo record that came out last week. It had been available online through Rhino's website, but now you can get that one in stores. That's a remastered Freedom of Choice. That is basically what's considered the audiophile pressing. And they did the same thing with Grateful Dead's American Beauty. And actually, last week we also got Black Sabbath self-titled as another one that way. So those were highly sought after, like I said. Now you can get them in stores for at least a limited time. Independent stores will have them. I'm not sure about the Devo, but I believe Kevin Gray did the remastering on the Black Sabbath, who is the man in charge of all of the Blue Note reissues for Blue Note Records, that jazz campaign that's been going on. So let me get to the new releases today. Like I said, there's not a lot, so you can get a little bit of a break this week, and I can go celebrate a birthday. So here you go. As I said, these keep coming. Miles Davis, and this is the fourth of the bootleg series. Miles at Newport. This is a very substantial set. This looks like 7 records. Sells for about $230. These are featuring Thelonious Monk, Tony Williams, Cannonball Adderley, John Coltrane, Bill Evans, Paul Chambers, Wayne Shorter, Keith Jarrett, and Herbie Hancock. 4 hours of previously unreleased material from 8 festival performances. Oh, I'm sorry, it's 8 LPs. Includes a 12-page booklet. Like I said, $230. So 1955 to 75, but all Newport Festival recordings. So if you want this, you're going to have to let me know, because it's something that will probably not be just sitting on the shelf in the shop. All right, let's see. Rory Gallagher live at the BBC. These are the best of. So there's a CD box set of this that is kind of a complete set, and that sells for over $200. So there's 7 or 8 CDs. And then there's a double CD best of, and then there's this, which is a triple LP version. This sells for around 80, 85, somewhere in there. 3 LP set, 11 previously unreleased BBC radio session tracks, previously unreleased, and a live at the Venue concert in London 1979, mastered at Abbey Road Studios. So if you like live Rory, let's see, some of these date back to 1972, but most of them are from, looks like 79. So I start with the big things. So with this, I have to say, I did listen to this record. It is not, it's more like her stuff with Tony Bennett without Tony, but it was pretty good. Lady Gaga's Harlequin. So this is not the soundtrack to the Joker movie. Joker movie's getting sort of like mixed reviews, but I think because it's more of a musical and people were really like, hey, we don't really hate musicals, but was there a reason to do that for the sequel to the first Joker movie? So she and Joaquin do a lot of singing in the movie, and on the soundtrack, he does a fair amount of the singing, and then here is sort of like her interpretation of some of those songs, and so taking away the bizarreness of the cover because it's all sort of related to the Harley Quinn character of the film, on opaque red vinyl too. This is sort of the special color, but it's all basically standards mainly. There's two original songs, The Joker and Folly Ado, which Folly is sort of like a waltz type song, and The Joker is a little more rocky. But she does her versions of I've Got the World on a String, If My Friends Could See Me Now, When the Saints Get Happy, That's Life. She even does kind of an interesting version of Close to You, the Carpenter song, and Smile, the song that famous old standard. So if you like sort of jazz standards, actually, I kind of recommend that because her voice sounds great. But it's not her pop record. So she's got the song out with Bruno Mars. She's got apparently two other songs that she did with him. Those are not going to appear on this or on her next album, supposedly, her pop record. I don't know if they're going to appear on Bruno's record whenever that comes out. I don't know how you're going to be able to get those in physical form. But yeah, so her pop record comes out in February, if you're sort of interested in that at all. Okay, there's two Blue Notes. So they've been doing this series of Blue Note records on blue vinyl. There's 10 records they said they're doing for indie stores only. These are going to be very limited and sort of collectible at some point. So this week we get Hank Mobley's Soul Station and Kenny Burrell's Midnight Blue. These have these sort of blue obi strips down the side that are sort of mimicking what the Japanese do with their records, and give you these cool sort of like notes about, well, I don't know if you're going to be able to read that. Might come out backwards. But anyway, celebrating the finest in jazz since 1939. Yeah, so Soul Station features Wynton Kelly, Paul Chambers, and Art Blakey. And Midnight Blue features Stanley Turrentine, Bill English, Ray Barretto. They're two of their most famous jazz records. So Blue Note's been really good about that, and they've been kind of paying attention to what are the classics that they're putting on blue vinyl. Some new releases this week. The new album from Dawes, Mr. Mandy Moore. Yeah, he took over from Ryan Adams. Let's see. House Parties is one song, and Still Strangers sometimes. This is a Sunshine Orange and Yellow blend LP. The album's called Oh Brother. I guess they're sort of a duo now. I mean, there's only two of them pictured. I think there used to be like four of them. I don't know. But maybe or maybe they're just kind of like there's only two of us on the front cover. It's not like bands don't do that. So if you like sort of folk rock or singer-songwriter stuff, they're pretty good. I'm trying to think of what I saw Dawes in. It might have been that film that they were doing like Bob Dylan songs that had not been released before. And T-Bone Burnett was involved. I can't remember the name of that. Someone will know. That was actually great, and Dawes were great in that. They were great. Milk Carton Kids, I remember being really great. Yeah. Samara Joy, her new album, Portrait. She's a jazz singer, highly lauded. This one is, I think it's more like standards again. Autumn Nocturne, You Stepped Out of a Dream, A Fool in Love, Day by Day. She's got a great voice, though. 8 tracks, looks like. So, anyway, Samara Joy. This guy is really popular on the TV circuit. I've never really sold many of his records in the store, but just because I don't sell a lot of him doesn't mean he's not a streaming success, and maybe this will move him over to pop or sales success a little bit. Jelly Roll and his new album Beautifully Broken, featuring I'm Not Okay and Liar. So that's out. I feel like I'm getting a break after last week. I mean, last week it was a real struggle trying to get everything in. Linda Linda's and their new album, No Obligation. Uh, they're sort of Asian descent and rock and roll kind of pop fun. Um, get into the Linda Lindas. Anyway, they definitely have a big kind of like young cult following. So um, they're cool. Older band making a new record, The Offspring, and this is their new album, Supercharged, a limited edition blue marble vinyl, indie record store exclusive. I mean, I remember when they just exploded with "Come Out and Play." Uh, like you couldn't escape that song. And then the whole "Pretty Fly for a White Guy" era. They're on Concord Records now. For a while, they were on. I think most of their big success was Sony. They'd moved there after they were on Epitaph. So they've been around for like 30 some years, longer than 30 years. Miles Kennedy and his new record, The Art of Letting Go. Miles, sort of like a rock artist, some sort of like bluesy rock, and then he's sort of a singer to the Stars. I think he's done a lot of work with Slash. Um, but anyway, this is on Napalm Records, interestingly, and on blue vinyl. So, Miles Kennedy. Another sort of metal band, metal-ish, I guess. Touche Amore. Is that how you say that? Spiral in a Straight Line, rose tinted neon vinyl. This is their new record. Definitely also have a cult fan following. This band I just have to mention briefly because I really, going back, sometimes you hit like certain eras. Y'all know a couple weeks ago, if you watched the video and I started getting a little misty about Sade, there's something about like that music of that time for me around like the late 80s, early 90s, because, it's like college. Yeah, you feel when you're sort of young and in love too and all that. And one of the albums that I also played a lot back then was by a group called Fairground Attraction. They were not big successes in the US at all. They had one album called A First of a Million Kisses. The lead singer, Eddie Reader, was a redheaded Scottish woman who had this incredibly like wide range vocally. I mean, she could almost be like a Mariah that way. But she was a backup singer before that for the Eurythmics on like their Revenge tour. And so she was great. And the guitarist in the band was Mark Nevin, who had just come away from a short stint being in Morrissey's band after the Smiths. And they formed with two other guys this group called Fairground Attraction. Well, they had one hit in the UK called Perfect, which went to like number 2. Sometimes you hear it in commercials, and it was pretty big over there. They were very much a throwback band, like they call it skiffle music. Sort of has that retro, like if Chris Isaak was kind of less beachy and a little more like kind of jazzy almost. Anyway, they only had the one album. They started to make a second album, broke up, and didn't do anything for 35 years. I mean, she had a solo career, pretty successful in the UK, and actually came to one of the shops that I used to manage. She was out doing like a tour, and I just begged to have her come sing. And I think she sang for a room of maybe a dozen people, and it was so I was not happy with the attendance, but she sang amazingly. It could have been 10 people or 10,000 people. It's just what an incredible voice, and knows how to like sing to any kind of room. And it was just her with her acoustic guitar and doing a bunch of solo stuff. Anyway, I had just discovered that they were back together after 35 years and just released a new record called Beautiful Happening. I think they were just touring Japan recently, so they're fairly popular there. But it's a full-on like 12 tracks, and yeah, so Fairground Attraction back after 35 years. They were retro before, they're even more retro now because their old album is like retro of retro. But it was sort of that period, when like the Katie Langs started singing sort of retro-y type music and stuff. That kind of stuff was really started taking off at the time. Anyway, that might have been a little bit of a long explanation, but I wanted to give them some props there. Another artist I really enjoy, Sandra Larquet. I've talked about him on this channel a fair bit. His last album, Avatars of Love, was actually that's his last original album. He did have an album of cover songs that was assembled since then called Understudy, I believe. But Avatars of Love was my choice of, I think, my album of the year for 2022. Wonderful record. And this is 25th anniversary, I think. 20th anniversary of Two-Way Monologue, his sort of breakthrough international record. It wasn't like a huge, I would say, huge seller necessarily in the US, but it did get a fair amount of praise. I mean, at the time, he was maybe like, I don't know, 19, 20 years old, something like that. He's still out there playing stuff he's doing a bunch of shows right now celebrating the release of this. Last year he was on stage he's Norwegian, and he was on stage in Norway as the lead actor in the Moulin Rouge that was being performed in Oslo. And so he's got some stage ability, but a really great. I saw him live too a couple years ago. Really great live singer. So anyway, and an entertainer. Good to see that back in print. Peter Tosh. What can I say about Peter Tosh that I haven't said or hasn't been said? What is this? It says 80 years of Peter Tosh. So would he be 80 years old now? I mean, I just think of like what we just had. John Lennon's would have been his 84th birthday the other day. It's very hard to believe. I mean, I suppose, you look at Ringo and you say, well, he's 84, but it is hard to believe. Peter Tosh, this is one of his most iconic albums, Mama Africa, and it's back in print, featuring Glass House, Not Gonna Give It Up, and Stop That Train, plus his version of Johnny B. Good. So if you like Peter, get that back in print. Special edition, recycled red vinyl. Ooh. Well, at least it's good for the planet, right? Herbie Hancock, and this is a music on vinyl reissue of his album Fat Albert Rotunda. And I don't know if this came first or the cartoon, but this is a limited edition of 1,000 individually numbered copies on translucent purple vinyl. I went to order more of these and they're gone, so I'm sorry if you missed this, but and it's been out before. This is number 221, so maybe gone fast. This album came out earlier this year, and this is just a different white vinyl pressing of it. The other one was glow in the dark, so if you have problems with the sound quality of glow in the dark vinyl, maybe white would be better. This is Sing, and this is actually a great record. It's all cover songs of artists that I would say inspired the Ravenettes, and their sound is very retro. It's, they used to get compared a little bit to like Jesus and Mary Chain, and I don't think necessarily they're quite as like gothy or whatever as that, although they do have that sort of dark side. But they're sort of entertaining, kind of like throwback type, with a little bit added fuzz, added distortion. And this features songs that were originally by the Cramps, Dwayne Eddy, the Everly Brothers, the Shirelles, Velvet Underground, Buddy Holly, Graham Parsons, Shangri-Las. Check that out if you haven't heard it. Sing by the Ravenettes. Punk Rock Goes Christmas. I think this has been out before, so it's back in print. This is a red vinyl. These are punk rockers doing Christmas songs. Yellow Card, All Time Low, Set It Off, Newfound Glory, Somerset, Ready Set, Real Friends, and more. So there you go. Punk Rock Goes Christmas. A couple of things that came out last week that showed up late in the shipping. The Hard Quartet, and this is on Matador Records. This features Stephen Malkmus of Pavement fame, Jim White, who's a longtime singer-songwriter, Matt Sweeney, and Emmett Kelly. So it's sort of like a super group along the lines of Monsters of Folk, um, but maybe more sort of like fringe art, slightly more fringe artists than those. I mean, I don't know. I hate to say that because Connor Oberst used to be pretty fringe, but it's not so much anymore. And then I believe this is pronounced Wave or the Wave. This is Graham Coxon of Blur and Rose Eleanor Dougal of Pipettes, who she's had a few solo records. He had a bunch of solo records. But this is them together. This is I had the CD, but now I got the vinyl. New album, limited edition orange vinyl. If you're into like glam rock and Bowie and stuff like earlier stuff, it kind of has that sort of like the 70s Bowie kind of sound to it in parts. It also goes off on sort of different vibes, but it's more Bowie-ish sounding than I think you might think from looking at the cover or seeing who they are. It's pretty good. CDs this week. There's a reissue of The Last Dinner Party, and this is actually coming on vinyl too. It's called Prelude to Ecstasy, and then they've got this print so dang small I can't read it. Acoustics and covers. It does feature like a bunch of cover songs on it. They do Wicked Game, Chris Isaak, Army Dreamers, Kate Bush, This Town Ain't Big Enough for Both of Us, which is a Sparks song, and some other things. There's like a record or an extra like 9 tracks on it. It is coming on vinyl, like I said. Also, Chat Pile and their new CD. This is called Cool World. It's interesting, this picture of like the cross on the hill. I feel like I just saw that. I was driving I-70 out towards like Kansas, and I swear to God, I saw a giant white cross like this on a hill somewhere in the middle of, was it Effingham, Illinois or something? Something about the crossroads. I mean, the thing was like, I don't know, 200 feet tall. It was crazy. Huge. So anyway, that's what that sort of looks like. Steve Earle, his new CD, Alone Again Live. The vinyl doesn't come out until late November. I'm not sure why they did that, but here's Steve's new live CD. Def Leppard, live at the Lead Mill. I actually had a customer who went to see this last year. This was performed in Sheffield, England. They went back to one of their original places and played a show that was mainly acoustic, I believe. But yeah, they do things like Hysteria, Slang, Fire It Up, Pour Some Sugar on Me, but mostly acoustic, I think. I could be wrong about that, but I'd have to ask her. And it's on, this is the Blu-ray and CD version, so it does have video as well. The vinyl for that came out on Record Store Day back in April, so I don't know if they're making more of those or not. I didn't check. Tony Levin, his new CD, this is called Bring It Down to the Bass. He just did a tour. Well, he's out on tour right now playing King Crimson songs with Adrian Belew doing the lead vocals and guitar, and then Steve Vai on guitar, and Danny Carey, I believe, from Tool on drums. And I just saw clips of it from someone who went to the Philly show yesterday. It looked fantastic and crazy, but crazy good. Like the sort of musicality was pretty impressive. There's a picture on the back of Tony with a room full of bassists. Like, which one do I play? I don't know which one to play. You would know Tony from his work on like Peter Gabriel's records quite frequently. He's usually out on tour with Peter. So anyway, looks like 14 tracks. So all right. Yeah, I was like, I don't know what else I'm really want to talk about this week. I'm still sort of in the come down from last week, so I figured that I would do recommends today of something that I thought felt kind of fit this season. And my recommends for this week is going to be Dead Can Dance and their album Into the Labyrinth. This cover, by the way, is not the original cover. The original cover had like a hand on it, and they changed it to this sort of um, spiral imagery. The back is the same. This was released on 4AD Records, one of the most iconic sort of independent record labels. Started in the 80s, and this album came out 1993. So it was a fair bit into their career. It's sort of like the time that bands like Pearl Jam and Nirvana were huge, and this comes out and it just showed how goth this duo still was. Made up of Linda, Brendan Perry, and why is her name escaping me right? Lisa Gerrard. And they were are Australian, a duo originally, or they met in Australia, and they sort of formed in like the early '80s, and then moved to England to try and get a little more exposure and work with the label and all that. And they were seen as being like the most goth of goth type artists at the time. And so mid 80s were pretty like synth heavy, kind of gothic records with a lot of like echo and sort of medieval kind of sounding. And by the end of the 80s, the two albums that they put out sort of close to each other, Serpent's Egg and Eon, were both more sort of like almost medieval. They were still medieval, but they had more of kind of a Renaissance feeling to them too, where it was a little, things were a little stripped back and a little more about like the actual like performance and a little less heavy on like the synth and whatever. Well, this album was sort of a change again for them because they started really embracing, and they had done it a little bit, but more world music culture type stuff. And so this album begins with Yulanga Spirit Dance, which is sort of an Aboriginal type dance. And I would sort of describe Brendan's singing is very like it's masculine, but it's very like uh, ponderous, portentous. That doesn't really sound positive. It's a very like rich baritone kind of croon that he has. Lisa's voice is otherworldly. She it sort of reminds me of Liz Fraser of Cocteau Twins, where they, although I would say Lisa sounds more like it's rooted in cultural type backgrounds, the world music. And she doesn't necessarily always sing words either. It's a lot of made up kind of vocalizing, which is sort of what Liz Fraser did and still does at times. So, anyway, Yulanga is kind of it's got really tribal kind of beats. And this, in a way, this doesn't necessarily feel like cultural appropriation the way a lot of other sort of popular music does. This is more like kind of paying homage to a lot of these sounds and things because they were surrounded by it. I'm sure she lived in Australia, so she heard a fair amount of this kind of music. This followed by the ubiquitous Mr. Lovegrove, which is a Brendan Perry track mainly, a lot of more like the synth and the dark singing. And then The Wind That Shakes the Barley is a cover that Lisa sings. It's like a traditional song. There's no instrumentation. It's just her voice singing in a kind of a dark and sort of moody way. Other tracks like The Carnival Is Over and the final track for Brandon, both of Carnival Is Over, and How Fortunate the Man with None, which is like a 9-minute build of a song, which closes this album and has a lot of kind of synth strings and like kind of horns, very orchestral. Like there's a lot being drawn from like classical music in this too. And then you get things like Saldek, which is again sort of more like Lisa doing kind of a world music type thing. The track Amelia So it's sort of a duet between her and Brendan, kind of vocalizing on like slight pitch shifts between them, and no idea what they're singing about necessarily sometimes. Most of his songs are in English. She would be sort of most famously known for doing the Gladiators, her work on Gladiator soundtrack, the original one, because neither one of them ever had like a top 40 hit, I would say. Um, and also, I think this album, at the time they made this, they'd already kind of gone through their 80s period and sort of drifted. Because they were originally sort of a couple, and she ended up moving back to Australia, uh, getting married and raising a couple of kids. And he stayed in Ireland and lived on an island in the middle of a river there. And she came to Ireland for 3 months. They collaborated to make this album. And since this period, I mean, they made another record sort of in like the late 90s called Spirit Chaser. And then they sort of broke up for long periods of time. They would do some touring here and there, but sort of in the Cocteau way, they just sort of seemed to end. Now they've kind of drifted back together. They had an album called Anastasis in 2011, I believe. And then they did another one in 2018 that featured no vocals at all, which to me was a little bit of a letdown. I think it's called Dionysus, because her voice is, in particular, is so special. And Brendan will go off and maybe do a solo record here or there, and you can hear him sing once in a while, but she doesn't sing as often. So anyway, but unique, very unique artists, not commercial whatsoever. I think they got a very little play on like NPR type stations and things like that. But if you're looking for good kind of atmospheric music for the Halloween season or whatever, that's not so like Monster Mash or sort of like kind of I don't want to say jingoistic, but you know, more sort of like easy choices, or just simple goth. This is really good stuff. So I recommend Into the Labyrinth by Dead Can Dance, and really any of their records are very unique. They might not hit you on the first listen for sure. I think it's a little bit of an acquired taste type music, so give it some chances and hopefully you'll love it. All right. I was gonna go into like Black Friday stuff today, but I think I'm gonna like give you guys a little bit of a break, and hope you enjoyed this slightly shorter video. And you know, last week at the end of the video, I said, "Oh well, if you've fallen asleep, you can rewind and whatever." And I had a couple people tell me, "You know, I did fall asleep a little bit, and I did have to rewind. So maybe you won't have to rewind as far this time." All right, thanks. Have a great weekend, and I'm gonna go have a little partay. All right, not this kind of partay. This kind of partay. All right. I'll see you guys. Take care. Peace.